Well, hello there ladies, gentlemen, and all variations thereupon. You may remember that in the earlier video, linked somewhere up there, I made a homemade stamp for a wax seal, and I messed it up because I did my symbol backwards. So anyway, today I'm going to do something a lot more ancient, namely a cylinder seal. Now these cylinder seals are from ancient Sumeria, and there was something that was used before we had a proper writing system and continued in use long afterwards because a lot of people were illiterate. Basically, the way that they were originally used, they weren't a cylinder seal, they were just a stamp seal like we use today. So if somebody had a big pot of grain or something that they had harvested and then wanted to mark it as theirs, they'd put a word of wax over the top, stamp it with their symbol on the top so you don't need any writing for it, and then people would know that's your property, and if they'd broken it and got into the property, into the grain on the inside, they wouldn't be able to seal it back up and like take a cheeky bit and seal it because they don't have your stamp. So it was a way of securing your own property and making sure nobody else got in and nicked it, or if they did, they'd have to take the whole thing, and more likely they're going to get caught that way. This evolved later on into making something called a cylinder seal, where a stamp seal that we normally think of when we think of like wax sealing and things like that. A cylinder seal is something that's rounded, looks a little bit more like a thread spool than a sort of stamp, and it was used to show an entire scene that you stamp on something. So rather than just having one symbol that would be like a tree or an eagle or something like that you'd stamp onto a wax seal, these were used primarily on clay. You'd mush clay across something and then you get a cylinder seal, normally made of alabaster or marble or something. You roll it across the clay, and whatever you'd engraved on the side, whatever scene, whatever line of text or something, you'd roll it across, and then that would appear on the clay and it would designate whatever you've rolled that on as being associated with you. Because it was long, it could be more complex, harder to forge, so on and so forth. Now, as I just said, the majority of these were made using some sort of marble or alabaster or some sort of stone like that. I'm just going to be using clay, and the reason I'm going to be using clay is because that's what I've got available. But you know, it's the sort of thing that they would have had available to them at the time. A lot of their writing was done on clay, so if you're a poor person, you just grab a bit of clay, you get it down by the river, pick it up, and then you can use this to engrave whatever you need to engrave. When you're making your bread, you fire it up and you've got your own cylinder seal. So a poor person would have used something that's made of clay. So grab yourself a decent sized chunk. I'm going for about this size, which you're going to create something probably about as tall as a spoon and about twice as wide. I'm going to make this into a proper cylinder. And the primary tool I'm going to use to try and shape this is going to be these, what are leather embossing tools. And the reason I'm going to use these, they've got a soft rounded point at the end, and rather than dragging a shape across the surface of the clay, I'm going to press in lots of small areas, because if I drag across the surface I'm going to create mounds and divots that I don't really want. I want everything to be pressed into the surface of this clay. So now that I've got it roughly the sort of scale that I want, I'm going to start putting first a border on the bottom. So just pressing in, creating an indent. Soften the edges just by rolling the tool back over. So you don't want a harsh edge at the bottom. Okay, so now I've got a border at the bottom. That's going to be the bottom area, and so I can begin carving on the shape that I want. And again, I'm going to not carve in, but I'm going to press in and take it out and move it along. And I'm going to create my maker's mark first, as this is going to be the centerpiece of the design. And as I'm doing it, I've just noticed I'm making the same mistake I did last time. I'm doing it the right way around. I should be doing it in reverse. So let's erase what I've just done. And there's my maker's mark, which is the letter B in Tengwa, B for Bridget. surrounded by 12 stars. The stars are more like crosses, but that's only because of this scale. For the next part of the design, I'm going to try and use some of these leather embossing stamps. I'm going to see if I can get this impression deep enough in there without deforming the cylinder too much. So let's not use them, and let's go back to doing things by hand. Now this is a Sumerian technology, but I'm not going to go for a Sumerian design. I'm going to go for something more true to me, and really this can be anything I want. So I'm going to do it how I want. And remember, if you don't have one of these tools with the round edge, you can just use anything. You could use your fingernail if you had to, but you could use a tip of a pen that doesn't work anymore. Use the tip of a knife, anything. You don't have to buy any special tools to have a go at this one. Okay, so there is the cylinder seal. We've got my maker's mark on one side, which, because the camera reverses everything, it looks the right way around to you. And then we have a butterfly and a budding flower. Now all that's really needed is to put that into the oven, bake this so it's hard, and then you can use it. Now I am going to try using this on wax, but I don't know how well this is going to work on wax, because these were originally a technology that was supposed to be used across clay. So I'll try it on wax and I'll try it on clay, and we'll see how these turn out. I'm not certain all the details are going to come out because it's very delicate, but we can give it a go. So let's pop it in the oven for this. I think this one's about an hour. Okay, so that's all baked up. I unfortunately messed up the bottom part, so it's slightly lopsided, but it stands up. And also I can't seem to find my sealing wax, so I can't remember seeing it since the move. I'm hoping I just left it at my parents' house by mistake, but it's entirely possible I left them at my old house. So I can only test it on clay at the minute, but if I find the wax, then I shall test it out on that and edit it into the video before it uploads. Okay, so that worked out fairly well. I mean, you can see the outline of my maker's mark there, the flower bud there. The butterfly worked out well on this side, but kind of got smushed on this side. The stars don't stand very proud, but I wasn't expecting those two very much because they're very fine details. But you can see how that would have worked if you would have had a thicker piece of clay to begin with and made a thicker seal. Then you could have got a longer image around the outside, and you could have a longer scene. Of course, if you're doing it with clay, then the thicker you make it, the longer it takes to harden and bake. This is still very slightly soft after being in there for an hour. I didn't want to leave it in any longer than that. Get a piece of clay, you roll it across to the side, and wherever you've slapped this onto, then once that dries and goes hard, then you've got a record of you sealing it. And it's a nice, quick, easy project. I think after seeing how well that worked on the clay, that probably would work fairly well on the wax, assuming that wax doesn't stick to the surface. Like I say, if I find the wax before I upload this video, then I'll edit it in. If I don't, then you'll just have to go without. If you like clay work, or you like doing seals with waxes and things, then I recommend giving that a try, because I did that including the hour of bake time. That was probably about an hour and 20 minutes of work. I just want to play with clay now. Anyway, see you in the next video.